Good evening. Welcome to the Dana Point City Council meeting of Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. We'll now reconvene our meeting. We'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilman Wyatt.
Stand.
The invocation this evening will be provided by OCFA Chaplain Dave Keene.
Thank you. Let's pray. Almighty God, we gather in your beauty amongst all that you have created to just celebrate this moment. There's so much that you have accomplished through us. So we are grateful for this opportunity to gather together as a community to make decisions to how to better the lives of others. We thank you for those who are serving right now, whether it's in our military overseas or our officers and firefighters in this community. We pray you keep them safe as well as their families. We pray for the wisdom of you to be given to this council, that they might make wise decisions for all. We pray in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. Brings us to our presentations and proclamations. We do have one presentation this evening from Visit Dana Point. So at this point, I'd like to ask the Executive Director of Visit Dana Point, Johnny Weston, would you please come up?
Good evening. How are we? It's an exciting time for Visit Dana Point, and a couple weeks ago, we were fortunate to launch a new logo that represents the town and represents the tourism industry in Dana Point. And I believe you all been given a hat, which is the new logo. Thank you, Councilman Wyatt, for attending the conference or the presentation. As I'm sure everybody else would like to have been there, it was on a Wednesday, and I know that could be challenging. But for purposes of the presentation, we did compile the production and stats that Visit Dana Point was able to make in 2019, and we'd like to share those with you to show the production numbers and the direction that Visit Dana Point's going in. But quickly, I do want to introduce Rachel O'Neill-Kuzi, who is our new Director of Sales. Rachel started with us about 2 weeks ago and is a homegrown from San Clemente. Worked 10 years at the Laguna Cliffs Marriott and the past 3 years at the Ritz-Carlton Laguna Niguel. So she understands our industry, she understands our town, and she understands the luxury message that we're presenting. And then Carrie DeGuido here also is our new marketing and communications manager, overseeing all the marketing initiatives, advertising, and public relations on behalf of Visit Dana Point. Rachel spent roughly 10 years with the Ritz-Carlton Corporation, with the last 3 years, or excuse me, 5 years being at the Laguna Niguel Ritz-Carlton. So with that, if you could play the video, this is a recap from 2019. Oh.
Chase down the brand new adventure. Step up, step out, and enter. There's no time for stalling. The wild is calling. When you risk it all, you learn to feel alive. Oh, searching for new life. Oh, reaching for new heights. Whoa, into the daylight. So open your eyes, we're making the climb, taking the dive, deep into the wild. dreams on the horizon.
Dana Point as a destination, being in Southern Orange County, is that the vibe here is relaxed, and we consider it approachable luxury.
There's no time for stalling. The wild is calling. Risk it all, you learn to feel alive. Oh, searching for new life. Oh, reaching for new heights. Oh, into the daylight. So open your eyes, we're making the climb, taking the dive, deep into the
Our partners at Visit Dana Point are inviting you to enjoy one of the most beautiful destinations in all of Southern California.
Check it out. The South Orange County spot has nearly 7 miles of beaches.
calling. No time, no time. Oh, searching for new life. Oh, reaching for new heights. Oh, into the daylight. So open your eyes, we're making the climb, taking the dive, deep into the wild. Deep into the wild. Deep into deep into the wild.
Shot of our production from last year, showing that there's a lot that goes into selling the hotel rooms to groups and travel agencies and branding the destination to attract people from around the world to visit Dana Point. So with that, we start the year off right with 2 brand new hires and a beautiful logo that you have now seen. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for expanding the T-Bid, for helping us make it inclusive of all the hotels in the destination. We look forward to starting that on July 1st. And again, we thank you for your partnership, Mark, your partnership, and the rest of the team at the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weston, for that presentation. Thanks for the work you're doing on behalf of the community, and welcome to the new 2 members of your team. And we look forward to working with you as well. Okay, that will bring us to the reading of the ordinance titles. At this time, the city clerk will read the title of the ordinance listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any ordinance titles to read?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 1 second reading and adoption of item number 7. It is an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending Chapter 3.13 of the Dana Point Municipal Code to align with state public contract code provisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Takes us to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council, the public, or the staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, do we have any items to be removed by the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. City Manager, are there any items to be removed by staff?
No, sir.
Do we have any items to be removed by council? Seeing none, I will move the recommended actions for the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. Moving along, brings us to the public comments section of the agenda. I could. There'll be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. At my discretion, the balance of public comments will be heard after the new business portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on a specific item unless it appears on the posted agenda. If you have any handouts, the city clerk will distribute them, and if you would please state your name and city of residence for the record. Madam Clerk, I see we have one public comment tonight, and that is by Mr. Len Gardner. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you. My wife and I live in the Lantern District. We've been here since 2014. The reason I wanted to talk tonight for a couple of minutes is we're concerned about the lack of progress of Prado West. I believe that project started in the summer of 2017, in July of 2017. So it's been 2.5 years. All that time, of course, Amber Lantern has been closed, and the project has been making very slow progress, kind of glacially slow. All around us in neighboring cities and also in Dana Point, such as at South Cove, we see projects that are making very good progress, moving right along. Practically nothing happens at Prado West. It's right in the middle of town. It's an eyesore. Amber Lantern is closed. And I'd like to know what the council has in mind in order to ensure a prompt completion of the project. We don't want this to drag on 2-3 more years. I was told by the developer a year ago that this project would be completed in 1 year from that conversation, which would be right now. Obviously, it's far from completion. And that promise of a year ago was not the first promise. It was supposed to have been completed the summer before that even. So it seems like these people just are not able to get this job done. And I don't know if the council has any way of pressuring them financially, such as a performance bond. One person I spoke with said there is a mechanism called a performance bond. So I don't know if that's been looked at, but I don't think it's a good thing for our city to be tied up with a street closed for 2.5 years and no end in sight. That's my comment.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, are there any late comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And with that, I will close public comments. If you'd like to, I'll reopen public comments. If you have, do you have a sheet? You can fill out the sheet after if you'd like to come up and speak now. Just please state your name and city of residence for the record. If
My name is Cheryl Bien, and I live in the Marinita Townhomes. And mine's probably kind of low priority, but I have been on the waiting list for, it's about the community garden at the corner of Stonehill and Golden Lantern. And I have been on the waiting list for 17 years. And I started out at number 98. And I just found out a few days ago that now I'm number 33, waiting for a garden plot at the community garden. And I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can make some rules or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they can do, but I just think waiting 17 years for a garden plot, and I can't wait 17 more years. I mean, so I'm just saying, if there's any way that you guys can encourage the park, I think at Park and Recreation or that department, or if they could come up with some kind of rules or some way that we could, you know, because a lot of those garden plots are just sitting there not being gardened. So that's my comment. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for that comment. Are there any other public comments before I close public comments? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it to council reports. I guess before we go around, I'll start by simply asking the city manager if you would make liaison with the residents who spoke to address the issues they brought up.
Will do, absolutely.
Thank you very much. So with that, let's go around the horn. If anyone has anything to report, Councilman Wyatt.
I have turned in my list of meetings to our city clerk, but two things. One, the San Onofre Community Engagement Panel, which generally holds quarterly meetings, and I'm the member for the council on that, has scheduled a meeting, and I think this is important for the public, and I put it in my council report so it can also go out with the minutes, on Thursday, March 26th at the San Juan Capistrano Community Center. And the current status is that in the next couple of months, all of the spent fuel will have been transferred from the cooling pond to dry storage, so that it sort of changes now the next phase of what's going on. And of course, they'll start demolishing the structure down there. But the important thing that is in this meeting, it's a workshop. I'll just read the notes on it. Planned workshop on plausible outlier events. So there's those things that could happen, right? Risks to San Onofre spent fuel storage and responses. And all but 15 minutes of the meeting will be dedicated to the central topic of natural and man-made events, potential consequences, remedies, and levels of emergency response. The basics of radiation will be covered, as it is key to understanding the consequences. Leading expert panelists will be involved in the meeting to answer questions and participate. So I think it's an important meeting for people in our community to just understand now that you have all the spent fuel in dry storage, and it's likely to be there sometime before at the speed the Nuclear Regulatory Agency is moving to move it away anyway. So it's been a concern. I think it's an important meeting, and I wanted to just bring it up so our residents know about it. Secondly, one that's more enjoyable, I guess, the Orange County Public Libraries every year puts on something called Literary Orange, a celebration of authors, readers, and libraries at the Newport Beach Marriott. This year it's April 4th. They have a website called literaryorange.org that will tell you the authors who are going to be there and the overall discussions. Tickets are on sale now. They generally sell out within a few days, and they went on sale yesterday. So I thought I would again announce it so those people who are interested in it would be aware of it, and hopefully we'll get some people to attend. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Councilmember Lewis. Okay, Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to report, and I've turned in my list of meetings. I'm all caught up. I think I got everything in for the meeting I missed too. So,
Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
I have turned in my list of meetings and I have nothing to report.
Thank you. I also have nothing to report, but I will turn in my list of meetings after this meeting. Okay, moving on. We have no public hearings or unfinished business tonight, which brings us to new business. Item number 9, the strategic plan review and the performance measures. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yes, sir. I have a brief staff presentation for you this evening. Much like Johnny's presentation, this is an update from 2019 of the metrics that the council has decided it wants to follow as we progress in implementing our strategic plan. I have a couple of slides just to remind everyone of our vision statement, a vibrant world-class place, and our mission to set the standard for an exceptionally livable city. We also have a set of values that the council has identified, and as you've walked around City Hall, hopefully you've seen that these are now prominently posted throughout the halls so that staff is reminded on a daily basis that our values match our behaviors. With respect to goal 1, I'm just going to go through the goals and highlight a couple of things that stand out, at least to me, and certainly if council has any questions, we can discuss those. Part 1 crimes are down. Again, Part 2 crimes are up. And as both Lieutenant Sheehan and Monty Leone have shared with the council in the past, I think it's a couple of factors. Certainly we like to think that our CSU team is really upped their game and being much more proactive, and that is reflected in their reports that they show every month. And our response times have improved, and I think that's one of the most critical metrics for our residents. Interesting, last year the council received a strategic plan of sorts for our code enforcement, and as a result, the number of cases is actually down, and a higher percentage of them are being closed upon initiation, which, after first contact with the resident or business owner, which is a good sign for us, and we'll seek to improve that number going forward, given our strategy of voluntary compliance through progressive enforcement. With respect to goal 2, I did want to point out that you see that the trolley numbers are lower, and it's a little counterintuitive in that we expanded trolley service this year. We did find a great deal of success with the traditional trolley season. However, weather was a factor for the Festival of Wales last year. Recall that the parade was canceled due to weather, and the Ocean Institute did not use the trolley for the Tall Ships Festival, which contributes a significant amount of ridership for that event. So that affected our overall ridership numbers. Very pleased to see a high number for Public Works, repairing damaged infrastructure within a 24-hour period. And you note with respect to the employee goals, we are implementing stretch goals as a part of our evaluation process in this calendar year, and so we'll report on those going forward. With respect to fiscal responsibility and accountability, the one thing I did want to point out here is the council did update the reserves policy, and that those reserves were adjusted as a part of this current fiscal year 20 budget. We still maintain, some would say, the 6th best set of reserves in Orange County. And so I think the council certainly is to be congratulated for all the check marks on 2019, because that is all the work the council has done. With respect to goal 4, unfortunate that we had more water quality postings in the last year, and that is, I think, somewhat attributable to the change in methodology by the county and how they collect the sample data. And we're hopeful over time that that can improve to provide a more realistic look of what the water quality situation looks like. I did want to point out that gasoline use is up year over year. A couple factors there. As you know, we had a number of vacancies that we filled, and now those folks, including our code enforcement staff, are out doing their job. And so it's somewhat to be expected, but now that we're fully staffed up, we'll look to see that number reduce over time with the continued evolution to hybrid and other vehicles. And you see we continue to produce great numbers at the Nature Interpretive Center in terms of connecting kids with the environment. With respect to goal 5, fostering economic health and prosperity, the big takeaway is that the economy remains strong here. Planning and building activity really are at record levels, continue at record levels, and yet the customers seem pleased with staff responsiveness and helpfulness as recorded on the metrics that we collect at the counter area. And with respect to the survey results, we, of course, have showed you the survey results from the last community survey, which was at the end of 2018. And as you know, we'll be doing another community survey in the 4th quarter of 2020 in advance of our next 2-year budget cycle, as well as in advance of probably this time next year, some workshops to comprehensively review our strategic plan to see if it's time to update any of these metrics, update some of the projects that we will have accomplished by then, some of which we've already accomplished and we're in process of accomplishing. So stay tuned for that. I did want to take the opportunity to share some information about the report to DP phone application that we've deployed. As you can see from the attached slide, we've seen pretty good acceptance of the app in the community. More and more Dana Point residents are using the Report to DP app to access city services and report issues. The most popular last year were graffiti, code enforcement, and parking related issues. And so we'll continue to use this, and we want to again take an opportunity to remind everybody that if they don't have the Report to DP app, which is shown up on your screen, they can download it from the App Store on Apple or from the Google Play Store on Android devices. And so I'm available if you have any questions on these. And we again thank you for your support as we implement all these.
Thank you very much for that report. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I will bring it back to council. Now, the action was simply to receive an update from city staff, so there is no actual action to be taken. However, I will go around the horn if anybody would like to discuss this or make any comments, make sure everyone has an opportunity to do so. So I'll start, Councilman Wyatt.
So my comments are primarily that we set the plan, we've determined metrics, we've started the measurement, and now ongoing, we should always continue to review how effectively they are and what we're learning. Certainly delighted with the results we had, but I'm sure there's more opportunity to learn. We just need to keep looking at the numbers and pass them on. I was intrigued by the fact that somebody waited 17 years for a space in our community garden. Maybe we, as we look at various things we could do to bring community together more, we should figure out how to reduce that number rather dramatically if we can. I mean, if there's that many people interested, well, there's one of two possibilities. We're not managing the actual usage very well, maybe, but I think clearly there's a bigger demand. And that's a really nice thing to bring various people from community and different walks of life together and have something in common. So that would be a really interesting thing in terms of a livable city with, so anyway, just happened to come up. It was an interesting topic. So no, I feel good about it. In fact, we're measuring, we'll go out. I'm sure the various staff members whose measurements here have some ideas about, what they're learning from the measurements and other ideas that something that would be more effective. So when we get ready to do another survey, look at what else we ought to ask and what else we ought to learn. But good report. It's nice to feel like we're operating the metrics that go back to goals. So I'm really pleased. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lewis. Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, staff, for all the work you've done on this and bringing together a graphical display of our metrics and how we're doing. It looks like we continue to improve as we measure. Just a couple of quick questions. Mr. Denny, when you talk about the trolley ridership being down a little bit this year, I would assume a lot of that had to do with weather, because we did have a lot of rain last summer. But my question is, we are looking to expand that and add another trolley so we can shorten the length of the routes. Do you think maybe the length or the time it would take to do a complete cycle had something to do with the ridership being down?
We've heard that anecdotally, and I've experienced it personally. So certainly that could be a part of it. We also think that ridership could have been stronger following Labor Day because not a lot of folks knew. They assumed it stopped, and we were running on weekends after that. And so part of it is going to be a marketing challenge for us going forward to make sure folks know that it will continue after Labor Day, particularly for locals on the weekends.
Right. Well, thanks for doing that and putting that together. I'm sure Measure B, we're going to actually monitor what happens with this additional trolley, the shorter routes. I know a lot of people are interested in that. And the last thing is, again, the water quality posting days. I would assume that would have to do a lot to do with all the rain days we had and all the runoff that we were putting down onto those beaches. So I don't know if we've taken a look at that, the number of rain days we had versus the posting days and the increase that we had year to year. As Councilmember Wyatt said, staff is already having conversations about ways that we can improve these metrics in the next go around to make them more interesting and hopefully generate even further questions. So we will look at that, as well as we count the raw numbers of days that the Salt Creek facility operates, but we don't look at it with respect to weather, and it is a weather dependent facility. So thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'd like to get away from the numbers for a minute and talk about the values. And it's clear to me that the city staff all understand and are living the values in here. It's obvious from the results. And so I just want to thank you for that and challenge you to be able to keep that up. It definitely shows, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just echo those comments. Thank you to the staff for carrying out the strategic plan and measuring it as well, and making this a truly meaningful document. I see Councilman Wyatt.
Yes, I want to provide some comment back on Councilmember Miller's thing on water quality. I also look at those every time sitting on the water quality board and the regional water quality board. And essentially every time we have a rain, there's a posting at the mouth, right? And as a city of Dana Point, there is nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. However, we are pushing hard on the area water board to find the sources upstream that are causing that and beginning to push their responsibility back up to the sources. And that's, in fact, we have next week another water quality meeting with the area management team. And that's really been the push until we can find a way to stop the runoff at its source. We can't fix it at the outlet at this point. So, but I'm always disappointed when I see that posted. I take it personally since I sat on the water quality board, and every time I look at that, I go, I failed again. But I'm trying to find a way to do something about it, and I hope we can do that.
Thank you. Okay. Well, before we move on, are there any further comments? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 10, which is the city council appointed representatives and city commissions, committees, subcommittees, and task forces. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yeah, Kathy Ward has your staff report tonight.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, tonight I've put together the list of agencies, outside agencies, and the list of internal appointments as well. I don't have any changes other than I think I mentioned in the staff report that Councilmember Lewis mentioned that she would like to be on the toll road agency. Other than that, everything else, and like I say, I did not make any other changes. I think I took off one internal task force. It was the parking and circulation, which sunsetted in December, and made a few staff changes, and that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. My only question for you is, do we have any public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
We do not have any public comments. Okay. In that case, I'll bring it back to council and call for a motion.
We'll move the item.
Okay. We have a motion. I'll second the motion. And we have a motion and a second, so the maker of the motion can speak to it first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, it was not a shock to me that Councilmember Lewis wanted this. We actually talked about this at last year's appointments as well. And yeah, I understand she would like to get involved in TCA. However, I'm also a board member on OCTA. And when I did that, when I got onto that board, it was my goal to bring these two agencies together. I've been on a little over a year, and I've been very successful at that. We have the 24191 project moving forward. That's something that's been going on between the two agencies for over 5 years. We have very little movement on it, and I kind of made it my goal that we were going to figure out how to get these agencies to work together. And so I dug deep into all the different text behind this. And one of the things I found was the FTIP, which is an acronym for Federal Transportation Improvement Program. And it turns out that OCTA controls that. They control all the numbers going into it, and not go into too much detail, but without those items being funded in the FTIP, you can't move forward with the project. So I worked very closely with OCTA staff to figure out how we could move that forward to make sure that we were answering all the questions. I worked very closely with TCA staff as the sponsor agency of this to make sure that the information that OCTA needed was given to them in a timely manner. Within a year, I brought 4 agencies together and got that project approved. We also have the South County Regional South County Traffic Relief effort going on right now. And I've worked very closely again, where there was a lot of concern about the different agencies, OCTA, TCA, Caltrans, who was responsible for what, were people outside their lane. And I can't really talk about it yet because we're still putting the details together, but in March, be prepared for an announcement that's going to make everybody extremely happy, especially San Clemente residents. I introduced an alternative last year called Alternative 22. Supervisor Bartlett worked very extensively on that with the county and with Rancho Mission Viejo. And for whatever reason, there was a hang up and we couldn't get it on the agenda. So I introduced it to the agenda, and it's the least impactful alternative that we have. It actually goes around the backside of the landfill. It accesses the new development out in Rancho Mission Viejo, so you're going to need a road there anyway, and has very little impact on any of the cities that it goes through, in particular San Juan and San Clemente. So I've been working very hard on that, and I would like to continue to do that moving forward to get these agencies coming even closer together. We have a lot of issues coming up, and one of the things that has never happened before is to get these agencies to partner together, get the CEOs talking together, get the staffs talking together. In one short year, I focused on that, and I was very successful. So I would like to stay on it.
Okay. Thank you. That'll go around the horn for any other discussion on the item. Councilman Wyatt?
Well, I guess I have a question here. There was 2 TCA boards, right? Councilmember Lewis, are you picking one of them or a particular one? Okay, and that was the 241, essentially. Okay, thanks. All I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lewis?
Thank you. It does not surprise me that I am not being chosen for this board. I have been trying to get on this board for a couple of years, and I have been a very outspoken critic of TCA. TCA has been, in my opinion, a financial disaster. We should have had this audited by the state. I have been involved with several members of the state and federal government asking to get an audit, and spoken with many groups in San Clemente to see what can be done about the TCA. Now the TCA's response, if you look at their financial statements, buried in there, I think, like page 50, they talk about that. I think right now it's like $9 in drive time one way on the extension up there to go from Dana Point up to John Wayne. And in their financial statements, they talk about that they're going to have to continue raising the fees. They don't know if that's going to cover what they need in the future. Their loans have exponentially exploded. So it does not surprise me not being part of the TCA in-group, but it's unfortunate. I think we need new eyes. I think we need people who are not part of the clique to go in there and see what's going on and get a real honest assessment. I was there, gosh, I think last April, there was a meeting where the TCA was supposed to pick an auditor to audit their books. Now, this isn't an audit where you go in and you look at how they're spending your money. This is an audit to say, do our receipts match our books? Well, it was both TCA boards meeting at the same time. The TCA staff had already picked the auditor, signed the contract, and was already using this auditor without the board even having seen it or approved it. There was another thing that and then when there was the AB 1273 up there, the TCA staff had already written a letter to Sacramento coming out opposed to AB 1273, and that item was on the agenda that day for this board to opine on, but it had already been done. So this is the kind of way that TCA has been operating, by a very friendly board, and I think it's time, it's actually over time, for people who actually want to look and see how our money is being spent. Now they're talking about fixing their financial problems by putting in what they call managed lanes on our freeways, which we have already paid for as taxpayers. And a managed lane is they're going to turn our freeways into some toll lanes. And so you can, instead of being in the carpool with two people, if you're, part of the 1% solution, you can pay and get in the carpool lane. How that's going to help anybody, I have no idea. But this is the kind of administration we have in this agency. I think it's been very poorly managed, to say the least. And I would have liked to have seen some more critical voices and eyes in there on it. But as I said, it does not surprise me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Federico?
I'd just like to say, I'd like to support Councilmember Miller's opportunity to continue to make positive change at TCA by leveraging his involvement in OCTA. And I do think he's doing a lot of good work to move that in the right direction. So I'll support that.
Thank you. And I'll just add to that, I support that as well. Councilman Miller's been doing good work at TCA. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge, and he's been representing the city very well on it. So I support him continuing on. So with that said, I will go around. If anybody else has anything more, Councilman Wyatt.
Well, I have a, just a follow question. So there are two boards, right? And generally they meet same place and same time, right? Is that my understanding? So, Mayor Vigzoik, you're on one of them, right? The San Joaquin, is that what it's called?
That's correct.
Yeah. And Councilmember Miller is your alternative and vice versa, because that way you can both be there at the same time. As mayor, you've picked up at least a half a dozen more committees that you're now involved in. One, are you planning or nominating yourself essentially to stay on the San Joaquin one as the member there, or is that, is that, we haven't discussed that. I'm just asking.
That's correct. The list is staying exactly the same. As we circulated this, the only request for a change was to replace Councilman Miller on the 241. So everything else is staying the same.
So that was the only actual request that came in to change?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. So, well, I think we already have the answer to that question. So we've made that clear. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Councilman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clear the air tonight about what Councilmember Lewis has been talking about, I'm not here to debate this. If you go and watch our meetings, everything that she brought up about the audit is correct. The staff was reprimanded for that. We actually ended up having to do a second audit because of what they did. They didn't do what we request them to do. So there were a set of eyes on that. I chair the Finance and Investment Committee, or I used to last year. And that was one of the things we brought up in committee, was that what you did is not what we requested and promised to the public. And we went back out and did another audit where we went out and we hired a separate auditor for that. As far as AB 1217, if you watched that meeting, our CEO was reprimanded vehemently by many board members. There's a lot going on at these meetings. A lot gets done in committee, but a lot happens out at the actual board as well. There are a lot of eyes on this. There are a lot of questions being asked about what's been going on within this agency recently. And so there is a lot of oversight, and to classify it, or I'm not sure the right word is, but classify it the way that you heard tonight, it's just not accurate. There's a lot of oversight going on. We are very much in tune with what's happening. If you understand the initiation of the toll roads, you would understand what's going on. And quite frankly, we are not asking to put managed lanes in. We're talking about HOV lanes. Caltrans has asked us to study managed lanes. That is not a TCA directive. Caltrans has an agenda to do that statewide. That's how they're planning on paying for maintenance on their roads. That doesn't mean we're going to do it. That doesn't mean OCTA is going to do it. It just means Caltrans has directed us to study that. And that's as far as it's going to go, as far as I'm concerned. So to make the claim that we're going to go out there and charge you to drive on roads that taxpayers have already been for, I agree 100% with Ms. Lewis on that. I am not okay with that. You're going to have to find another way to fund it. But however, if you look at managed lanes, especially, you've got a perfect example here out on the 91. They work. Okay, it does relieve traffic. They are expensive depending on what time of the day you're there and where you're going, but it's an option. You can use it if you need it. If you don't, you can get over into the general purpose lanes and use it. So just an example of, I'm very deeply involved in what's going on with transportation in Orange County, and even to a certain extent over in Riverside County because of the 91 Express Lanes. So there's a lot happening. It's important that we have a voice down here. There's only 5 people in the county that sit on both OCTA and TCA. 3 of them are supervisors. I happen to be one down here in Dana Point. There's the mayor of Orange also does the same thing. So there's a lot more information out there. It's just trying to get everything out so people understand what's going on. And we don't agree with everything that Caltrans is asking us to do, but it does make sense to use an agency that is not using tax dollars to study that. So that's what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yeah, okay, so we're not going to debate, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with your characterization. And if you look at the financials of TCA, and not just their financials, but read what they put out to investors and read the 50, 60 pages, you will see that they have completely mismanaged money for years, while this board sits there and votes to allow this mismanagement. So again, not surprised. And in terms of the 91, yeah, if you can afford, if you're one of the 1% that can afford to get on these lanes, I'm sure it works great. But the reason the 73 is pretty empty and the 405 is still jammed is because most people don't want to spend $18 2 ways to get to and from their place of work. So whoever it is that is directing this is not really the issue, because you're saying you're trying to get these 2 together. The issue is the loans outstanding for the TCA, who has just refinanced their loans in such a way to make their financials look better, but they don't explain to you that they are doing accretion bonds, that they are adding interest to principal, that they're doing a lot of things to make their financials look better. But, and an audit, like I said, is an audit to not go in there and see where money is going and is it being spent wisely. It's an audit to determine, do our books accurately reflect our revenue and our expenses as our receipts have shown that these are our expenses? Is that properly put on our books? That's not the kind of audit I'm talking about. That is not the kind of audit Congressman Levin was talking about, and that kind of audit has not been done on the TCA. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. With that, I'm going to call for the vote. We'll do it electronically. Okay, I see that the motion passes 3-2 with myself, Mayor Pro Tem Federico, and Councilman Miller in favor, and Councilman Wyatt and Councilmember Lewis opposed. Okay, with that, that will bring us to staff reports. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This weekend, we are 1 month out from the Festival of Wales, and I just wanted to publicly remind everyone that this year's Festival of Wales Parade will be on Saturday, March 7th, down in Dana Point Harbor. It will not be on PCH this year. It's being changed down into the harbor, so you're going to start reading more about that, and I thought I'd take the opportunity to just remind everybody of that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Attorney?
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, that brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. The next regular meeting of the City Council will be February 18th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Right here in the City Council chamber. With that, we are adjourned.